I never thought much about the basements in this neighborhood. They all looked the same from the outside. Small, square windows peeking out from the ground, sometimes glowing with the blue light of a television late at night. When I moved here with my son, I was grateful for the quiet, the wide lawns, the way the neighbors waved but never pried. It felt safe, or at least safer than the city. My neighbor across the street was the kind of man people trusted. He mowed his lawn every Saturday, always wore a clean shirt, and remembered everyone's birthday. He even brought over a casserole when we first moved in. I used to watch him from my kitchen window, thinking how lucky I was to have landed in a place where people still cared about each other. But then, little things started to go missing. A sock from the laundry, a toy car from my son's room, a photograph from the fridge. At first, I blamed myself. I was tired, working 2 jobs, raising a child alone. I told myself I was just forgetful, but the feeling that something was off grew stronger every day. Sometimes at night, I'd wake up certain I'd heard footsteps in the hallway. My son would cry out in his sleep, and when I rushed to his room, he'd say he saw a shadow standing by the door. I tried to reassure him, but I couldn't shake the sense that we were being watched. One evening, after putting my son to bed, I went down to the basement to look for a box of winter clothes. The air was colder than usual, and I noticed a faint draft coming from behind the shelves. When I moved them aside, I found a small, square panel in the wall, one I'd never seen before. My heart pounded as I pried it open. Behind it was a narrow tunnel, just big enough for a person to crawl through. I stared into the darkness, the smell of earth and damp concrete filling my nose. I should have called someone. I should have run upstairs and locked the door. But something pulled me forward. A need to know. To understand what was happening in my own home. I grabbed a flashlight and crawled inside. The tunnel was rough, dug by hand, the walls pressed in close on either side. I tried not to think about how long it must have taken to dig something like this, or how many nights someone had spent beneath our feet. The tunnel twisted and turned, sometimes branching off in other directions. I saw scuff marks on the floor, a child's hair clip, a crumpled receipt from the grocery store. After what felt like hours, I reached a larger space, a kind of hidden room lit by a single bare bulb. Shelves lined the walls, filled with objects that didn't belong together. A baby's shoe, a broken watch, a faded photograph of a family I didn't recognize. My stomach turned as I realized what I was looking at. These were trophies, collected from the houses above. Suddenly, I heard footsteps echoing through the tunnel. I turned off my flashlight and pressed myself against the wall, barely daring to breathe. The footsteps grew louder, then stopped just outside the room. I could hear someone breathing, slow and steady, as if they were listening for me. I waited, heart hammering, until the footsteps faded away. I knew I couldn't go back the way I came. I found another tunnel, one that sloped upward, and followed it until I reached a wooden door. I pushed it open and found myself in my neighbor's basement. The room was immaculate, every tool in its place, the floor swept clean. But now I saw it differently. I saw the trapdoor in the corner, the faint outline of dirt on the rug, the way the shelves were just a little too full of things that didn't belong to him. I tried to slip out quietly, but the door at the top of the stairs creaked as I opened it. I froze, listening. Upstairs, I heard the sound of a chair scraping across the floor, then footsteps coming toward the basement door. I ducked back into the shadows, heart racing. The door opened, and my neighbor stood at the top of the stairs, silhouetted by the hallway light. He didn't say anything. He just stood there listening, as if he could hear my heartbeat from across the room. I waited until he turned away, then slipped out the back door and ran home, locking every door and window behind me. I wanted to call the police, to tell someone what I'd found, but I couldn't. Not yet. I needed proof. Something they couldn't ignore or explain away. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house made me jump. I kept my son in my bed, holding him close, listening for footsteps in the dark. I knew I had to go back. I had to find something that would make them believe me. The next day, while my neighbor was at work, I returned to the tunnel. This time, I brought my phone, ready to take pictures of everything I found. I moved quickly, retracing my steps to the hidden room. I snapped photos of the shelves, the trophies, the tunnel entrances. I found a notebook, filled with dates and addresses, and took pictures of every page. But as I turned to leave, I heard a noise behind me. A soft click, like a lock sliding into place. I spun around, flashlight trembling in my hand. The tunnel entrance was blocked. Someone had closed the panel from the other side. I was trapped. The air in the tunnel felt thinner, colder. I pressed my ear to the panel, listening for footsteps, for any sign that my neighbor was still there. But all I heard was the distant hum of a furnace, the muffled sounds of life continuing above ground, oblivious to the world beneath. I tried to force the panel open, but it wouldn't budge. My hands shook as I dialed 911, but there was no signal this deep underground. My flashlight flickered, casting long, warped shadows on the dirt walls. I told myself not to panic, that someone would notice I was missing, that my son would call for help. But the hours dragged on and the silence pressed in, heavy and absolute. I paced the small room, searching for another way out. I found a vent near the ceiling, barely wide enough for my arm. I tried to pry it open, scraping my knuckles raw, but it was bolted tight. My phone battery was dying, the light growing weaker with every passing minute. At some point, I must have dozed off, curled up on the cold ground. I dreamed of sunlight, of my son's laughter, of the world above. When I woke, I wasn't sure how much time had passed. The air was stale and my throat was dry. I thought I heard voices, my neighbor's maybe, or someone else's. But when I called out, no one answered. I started to lose track of time. Hunger gnawed at me, but fear was worse. I thought about the other families, the ones who'd lost things, who'd felt watched but never knew why. I wondered how many people had walked above these tunnels, never realizing what was beneath their feet. Then, one day, maybe 2, maybe 3, I heard a new sound. Heavy footsteps, hurried voices, the clatter of tools against concrete. Light flooded the tunnel as the panel was wrenched open. Blinded, I shielded my eyes, expecting to see my neighbor's face. But it was the police. They pulled me out, their voices urgent, asking questions I couldn't answer. I saw my neighbor in handcuffs, his face blank, eyes fixed on the ground. My son was there too, clinging to a police officer, his face streaked with tears. They told me my neighbor had vanished for days, that someone had finally noticed the strange noises, the missing people, the tunnels. They found me by accident searching for him. The neighborhood was in chaos. Reporters, police tape, neighbors whispering in the street. I was safe, but nothing felt the same. My house was just a shell now, every shadow a threat, every creak a warning. I moved away, but the fear followed me. Sometimes late at night, I still hear footsteps in the hallway, and I wonder if the tunnels ever really ended, or if some doors once opened can never be closed again. Even after we left, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching us. My son would wake in the night, asking if the man from the basement was gone for good. I'd hold him close and whisper that we were safe now, but the words felt thin, like a blanket that couldn't quite keep out the cold. The police said the tunnels were sealed, that the neighbor would never come back. But sometimes, when I closed my eyes, I'd see that hidden room again. The shelves lined with pieces of other people's lives, the darkness pressing in from every side. I'd remember the way the earth smelled, damp and old, and the silence that seemed to swallow every sound. Neighbors moved away. Houses stood empty, and the street grew quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful anymore. People stopped waving. They kept their curtains drawn, their doors locked tight. The sense of safety that once filled this place was gone, replaced by something colder. Something that lingered in the corners and under the floorboards. I tried to rebuild, to give my son a sense of normalcy, but the past clung to us like a shadow. I learned to live with the unease, to check the locks twice, to listen for sounds beneath the floor. I never went down to a basement again. And sometimes, when the house is still and the world outside is silent, I wonder how many other tunnels are out there, hidden just beneath the surface, waiting for someone to find them.